Welcome to my podcast, Live from the Heart. I'm your hostess, Anne-Claire Méret, and I'm delighted to welcome you today to live a little bit more from the heart. I have a very special guest today, dear to my heart. His name is Matthew, and we used to be together in a very loving relationship years ago. Matthew introduced me to polyamory, other ways of relating, and I felt very safe and very loved. Thanks to our relationship, I opened up my world and I realized that I was able to love so much greater than I thought I was able to. And I also kind of reunited two things that were separated in me was the freedom, which is a value very dear to me, and the attachment, healthy attachment and relating to someone in closeness and being able to experience both at the same time was mind-blowing. And I realized that it was possible to operate in another dimension of love where there would be so much more love in my life. And today I can still feel the impact of everything that we've shared together. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being who you are and for showing me ways to love. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. And it's mutual. You really opened up a new confidence in me, a new possibility of how I could love more fully, more freely, more responsibly. Truly. Thank you so much.
Can you please introduce yourself with your own words? Who are you? Where are you in the world? All of that.
I'm Matthew. I grew up in the United States and I moved to Asia about 7 years ago. I tend to live in northern Thailand. However, seasonally, I tend to go to other countries nearby. Not so much as a tourist, but more to get a sense of how people are living in other places. So I tend to stay in places for several months and, find a kitchen that I can cook in and find my favorite places to eat, this sort of thing. I've had many different roles in life. I've been in partnerships. I do life coaching. I've been a teacher. I've worked in information technology. But what I will say is where I'm at in my life now is a combination of paradigm shifts. Going from life in the United States where I was working in an office job and, I had the American dream or whatever checklisted, but I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't happy. And ever since I chose to leave that life, I'm learning so much more about life on this earth, about relationships, about what's possible, and also what's possible within me. There were so many beliefs and ideas of myself I had before, especially in my 20s, that were very limiting. And yeah, so my life is really about liberation and helping others find their own way to liberate their creative power and their power for love.
Yeah. Why do you think people don't dare to create the most beautiful life that they could create, including their love life?
I think it's a few things. The first thing I'll say I think it's simply they aren't around in proximity to examples of it. They might not have role models of those kinds of relationships. Their portrayals of those kinds of relationships, if at all, are in fiction, maybe in film or in book. And those are difficult to believe in if those are your only examples. The other thing is it's stigmatized in many cultures. So people who are doing it healthily might not be visible. They might be hiding it just because it feels easier, perhaps even safer, depending on your circumstances. So those are the two big things. And I'd say the third thing is our education. We're not educated to be breaking paradigms and challenging the nuclear family and challenging the normative behavior. We're educated to be followers. We're educated to be obedient and to think small. We're educated to memorize things. But to be living open-hearted, to be imagining possibilities, to be constantly questioning our responsibility for what's happening within us and around us in the world asks us to live beyond our education and to actually unlearn a lot of our education. So I think these three things are the main factors at play. I would also say an important factor is resources. Some people are stressed out. They don't have, they're in debt. Maybe they're having health issues. They're combinations of factors where people are feeling they don't have spaciousness to make changes, even if they have perhaps the desire to do so.
Were you inquiring the topic of love before you left the United States, and when you were working, like I would say like an American,
Mm-hmm.
because in Europe we work slightly different. We have more vacation and there's a bit more balance with the quality of life. Did you make the space to inquire love afterwards when you moved and broke free from this rat race?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was living in that life, my ideas of love are very more, I guess, they were more about pop music.
With terrible lyrics,
Yeah, yeah,
dramatic lyrics.
yeah. And I actually didn't know that there was another way to love until I had lived uh, abroad for a couple years, and there were a few people I met who really cracked me open. One particular relationship that just it honestly changed my whole worldview in terms of love. And I was already studying relationships, like from a practice point of view, because I did always want better relationships. So I was reading books and sort of wondering, why am I keep finding myself in these problems, in conflicts, in these patterns in my relationships. So I was trying to work on that. But as far as the power of what love can do in those relationships, that wasn't really the content until I had this experience within myself and with this other person, and they just opened the door. And ever since then, love has been pouring in and changing me, and I'm seeing how it's changing the people around me. Uh, yeah, it's.
Mm.
I would call it a miracle that happened to me, for sure.
Yeah, me too. I feel the same. Um, there is something very interesting that you've shared with me a while ago about someone that you've met and that
Mm.
you were sharing your love with. And this particular person, she was surprised because she was not used to be loved that way, in such a beautiful way, and accepted for who she was. And it was difficult for her to accept it and to allow it in her life. And that makes me think about that friend that I told you about, a friend that lives here in Ubud in Bali. And she was willing to share with the guy that she really likes that she likes him.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was so scared of it to say it. And
Mm-hmm.
we had a conversation, and I said, what is it? It's just a few minutes of discomfort, sharing your heart with him because you don't know his response. But you might get months, years, a lifetime of love with him. This is so beautiful. What is it? A few minutes of discomfort. It's fine. You can just go for it. And she couldn't see on the other side what she could get from this few minutes and the benefits of it. And I can feel that around me, many people are not used to imagining the best love that is possible because they don't even know it's out there. They don't even know it's possible for them, and they don't even trust that this is possible and that it's not just a show that some people are displaying, like, oh, look at my love life. It's so beautiful. They just don't believe it's possible. What do you want to tell them? These people don't believe.
The first thing I want to tell them is their imagination is bigger than they think it is. They just might not be allowing their imagination to go, to really let their mind go there. And doubt and judgment, our inner judge, is a big silencer to that imagination. Because as soon as we start allowing ourselves to challenge these normative cultural ideas about love, we'll have the inner judge it and say that's a fantasy, that's a lie, that's you're delusional, and that stifles your imagination. I would say that is the biggest thing. I would say the other piece is also how you experience your own body. And that might be with movement, that might be with dance, that might be with, could be yoga, could be even a sport or working out. There is a love relationship happening between you and your body that you don't need to be in another relationship. You don't need to wait for someone else to treat you a certain way to experience that love. You already have a potential relationship within you, and you can start there, and you can start there with your attention. And you got to create space for that in your life. You need to pause. You need to give yourself time. You need to create the conditions for that. But you can do it. And I do believe this opens up people's imagination as well. It did for me, for sure. I needed to learn to be with my breath. I needed to learn to trust my body. Once I started doing that, my imagination started to bloom around love, around relationships, around what's happening on this earth. Yeah, it's available to everybody. It's not just something some people have and other people don't.
Thank you. So this is a way to open the door of the possibilities, but I would say this is also a way to become magnetic, because when you're fully connected to yourself and you're open, and there's so many people want that. It's just that it makes you then super attractive.
Yes. Yeah, you will glow for sure. And people are like, what are you doing? Like, there's
I love myself.
yeah. And which is also great, because this is even that question is inviting people to consider something outside their status quo. Now they're curious. And when you start talking about it, now you're having a conversation. You're not relying on labels to predefine convenient terms for, what's sort of like common in movies or in conversation. Now all of a sudden they're like, wait, what's different here? I want to know. I'm willing to take the time and listen and consider and witness that this is happening in another human. And perhaps if there's someone you're close to, they're gonna believe it. They're gonna trust it.
Yeah. I remember when I was with you. So for the people to know how we met, because I know that there are a lot of people listening to us who are thinking, how does Anne-Claire meet those amazing men? Because I don't meet anybody. And they're on Tinder swiping.
Yeah.
And I just go places and I
Yeah.
meet them. And it's pretty easy. So Matthew and I, we met in a workshop in North Thailand, because we had the same coach and we were learning from him, and we were practicing some coaching together. And then we spent a bit more time together, and just feeling you, I could feel what you're sharing right now. And I remember the first conversations we've had, I told you we should record that and we should be sharing that with the world, because there was so much wisdom. And it felt, I already used the word before, it felt very safe because it was very grounding. And I think that the idea that I had, which was a mental idea of polyamory or open relating, or whatever words you want to put on that, it was more fluffy. It felt like some things like, oh, like butterflies, like let's just do that and then do this without attachments, and we
Yeah.
don't care what's going to happen. And there was no, I was curious about that, but it was not something that I was looking for. And it happened with you because there was this groundedness and there was this safety and this curiosity. And then when we sparked the curiosity, I wanted to read all the books you suggested. I wanted to have the experiences. I wanted to feel it within myself, what it means to be the creator of my relationships. And it takes courage. And for the people listening to us who have the curiosity too, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And we know the courage that it takes, especially when around you, none of your friends right now understand what you're doing, because that's what happened to me. None of my friends, my girlfriends, when I was telling them that I met you, they love me, so they listened to me and they were curious about it. But still, to that point, they don't understand how I can relate to men like I do with different relationships. And can you explain what kind of resources we need to explore so that we can grow into love? What do we need? Like the toolbox.
Yeah, for sure. The first thing I'll say are the inner resources that you have. And as I was saying before, it's coming back to your relationship with yourself. How are you creating spaciousness within yourself? Do you do that through meditation? Do you do that through physical activity? Do you sing? Do you do dance? Do you create art? How are you reaffirming that commitment? Because here's the thing about any relationship: no matter how much love you feel, you need to be with that love with responsibility. And this is the part that grounds people. When you notice the friendships and the people around you who are responsible toward your friendship, who are listening, who are taking the time, who aren't immediately meeting you with judgment, those are the people in your life who are going to help you nurture that outside of you. So notice those people as well. Do what you can within yourself, with your attention, with your body, with your breath, and notice the people that are already in your life that are maybe they stand out. Maybe they're, dressing differently than most of the people around you. Maybe they're working unusual jobs. Maybe they started their own businesses. Maybe they live lifestyles maybe outside of the status quo. Notice those people. And then also notice the people who you're curious about, the ones you don't know yet, the ones that are doing things that inspire you, and talk to them. It doesn't mean you need to become best friends or anything, but just ask them questions. Bring that curiosity to them and find out what their journey has been. Find out what their experiences have been. And you will start to notice that within you there is desire, there is even structure about things you want to do, things you want to try in relationships, in love, with your body, with your time, maybe perhaps even with your careers and your families. And you will start to consider, what is the most loving environment I create within myself and outside of myself? And these can be incremental changes that lead to really big changes in your life. Whether that's where you're living or what you're doing, how you're working, the way you're speaking, the language you're using, what you're reading, what music you're listening to, it really can grow very quickly, incrementally. And yeah, you will trust yourself to find those initial steps, and it will keep growing. Because that is the nature of love, honestly. The nature of love is expansion.
Yeah. What did you discover about yourself when you became a greater lover?
I love the language because it suggests a lot of things.
I did it on purpose.
Yeah. I discovered about myself that things that I thought I was insecure about, beliefs I had about anything, my body, the sound of my voice, my confidence, these sorts of things started to just be much more quiet. They stopped holding so much power over my decision making. And I started to notice that I was no longer in relationships to sort of get something. I started to notice that I just have a lot to give. And I got really excited about that. And the more that I learned how to give, and I say give like not in a dependent way, but in like a generous way, to realize that you have resources of energy and time and attention to listen, to really feel into someone's emotional experience, even if it's not your own emotional experience, to become attuned to another human being. These are things I never knew I could do. I grew up most of my adult life believing that I felt less than other people. I felt that I was less sensitive emotionally than the people around me, because I saw the people around me having more extreme emotional experiences than I was. Sometimes I did or did not understand them. And but for me, a lot of that was because of how I was living. I was kind of shutting things off within. And as soon as I started opening these doors in my body in terms of creating spaciousness, and also in the lifestyle I was living, I started to realize that person who I thought I was actually is a myth, or at the very least the past. And yeah, I just kept surprising myself. And when I say self, it's also quite funny because anytime we start talking about love for more than 5 minutes, it does start to become a little spiritual. And I will say that about self, my idea of a me and my idea of a self and my dependence on having like strict identity suddenly isn't that important. What's more important is what I do. What's more important is what I do with my time and energy, the temporary structures I create to support change in my life and in the lives of others. Suddenly, it's not centered around just protecting my security. It's about something else. It's about connection. It's about desire. It's about growth. It's about possibility.
Thank you for sharing about that, because I really feel that this choice, because now it's a choice to continue living a polyamorous dynamic in my relationship, is about allowing the love in my life and being open to it. And it is bigger than me. And because it's bigger than me, then I have to surrender and not try to control and grasp on what I have today, because I know it's going to change and shift as I'm going to evolve and as my partners are going to evolve. And this can be scary. And this could be also why a big reason why people are not trying different ways of relating, because then they're going to have to release the control on who they are and what makes their identity today, and the control on others, and the sense of security that they're building through their sense of identity and their ways of relating today that is safe for them, without knowing if tomorrow will bring the same level of safety.
Yeah, I hear you totally. And this can be complicated depending on the life you lived so far. You know, if you grew up in a childhood where you didn't have a lot of safety or security from your family, for example, those voices inside can be extra loud. The ones that are preoccupied with avoiding re-experiencing the past, preoccupied with the fear that what happened before is going to happen again. It can be hard to say, well, what about everything else? How do we trust that the future will be different than the past? How do we do things we've never done before? Yeah, and I say that with compassion, but it's available to everyone. And maybe you do that with a therapist. Maybe you do that with a coach. Maybe your way of easing into the present and easing into your self-created security, you will find your own way. But trust that you can do it.
Yeah, that's not an easy one. And
Mm-hmm.
I I'd like to share something that we shared just before starting the recording together, that I'm currently living with my second partner. And I have what we call a primary partner with whom I live at home. Christian, most of the time, is my fiance. And actually, I was dating Christian when I was dating you, and he's going to listen to that episode. So, hi, my love. I know you're looking forward for this episode. We love you. And when I met the other partner that I currently have, I remember at the beginning I was just curious, and it was like, kind of light, and I didn't know what the future would hold. And I remember giving it to the universe and writing little notes and saying, "Okay, I'm doing my best." Um, um, Allowing my emotions and showing up for both my relationships. But then the outcomes I cannot control. So I give it to God. I give it to the universe. I give it to life to find solutions that I cannot foresee before things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, it's been working really well. And it does require this faith that there is some higher powers that will just open the path, and that everything is going to be okay in the future, and that we will find other sources of security within ourselves, and also just by developing great communication skills. This is something that we haven't talked about from the beginning, but growing communication skills is a key. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, we got these bodies. We're constantly listening and seeing and perceiving and interpreting. For us to succeed in relationship, we need to be extra skilled at communicating our emotional inner world. Because all the time, even if you're aware of it or not, we're interpreting everything that's happening between us as humans. And when you're, especially in romantic or sexual relationships, that intimacy raises the stakes. You know, everything matters more. And when people are caught in assumptions or expectations in their communication or their thinking, there's going to be misunderstandings. There's going to be hurt feelings. There's going to be behavior that is defensive and charged. However, if we can learn to help each other, understand each other better, and pause and care for each other rather than control each other, the communication is the medium that we do that through. And that's language for sure, but it can be touch. It can also be how we use eye contact with each other. It can be how we are communicating our love and trust with someone else with our body. There's lots of ways we communicate with each other, and that builds, whether we are aware of it or not, builds in our kind of subconscious trust between us. It grows. We feel that connection stronger. We feel a bond that is available to us even when we're struggling, even when we are in doubt, because now we have a communication paradigm, if you will, a history between us that we can rely on. And especially if we're aware that the other person is actively also doing the same thing, we can trust that this is going to continue to improve. They're in it. They're invested. They're committed to improving their capacity to understand me and what's happening around them, and also themselves. Like, there's also the inner communication to consider. When we can continue to improve this, the more attuned we are with the truth that's happening, what's happening here and now, even what's happened in the past, and we can let go of our stories about it. We can let go of being preoccupied with trying to fill in the blanks. Because once we start filling in the blanks, we start creating illusions. But the more we can speak, the more we can write, the more we can listen, we reduce the opportunity for those false narratives to begin.
Well, I know that people who are in open relationships do it a lot because they have to.
Yeah.
And I'm still amazed that people in monogamous relationships don't do it so much, because we have to do it and develop those skills when we are more people, because there is more risks of miscommunication and hurting each other without even noticing, because it's just too many things to consider. But when I went through the readings of the books and the exercises in the books, I realized that everything was so valuable also for monogamous relationships. And I thought to myself, what? Like,
Yeah.
how come we don't learn that? We learn in life so many things which are not important, and that we never use at an adult age. I wish I had learned all of that as a teenager.
Yeah.
I would have had so much more fulfilling relationships in my 20s.
Yeah, me too. It's like, I certainly would use it a lot more than I use my calculus skills.
Yeah. Wow. What else do you want to share about love?
This is getting a little into the spiritual, but I'll say that love for me is a force. It's a force between all things that exist. Similar to gravity, in a way. If you imagine that these tiny quarks and atoms are trying to draw to each other, they're seeking reunion, right? And when they seek reunion and they succeed, they create matter. That energy is doing this all the time. And we too are. We too are, as beings who seek clarity between each other. We seek connection. We seek wholeness, really. And so my experience of love is really a return to wholeness. And as I cultivate that in the way that I live, in the way that I think, in the way that I relate. I get to see the parts of my past, the parts of my belief systems that are in the way of wholeness, or creating separation, that are creating illusion, that are creating division, creating conflict. I see those start to fall away. So yeah, it's a really when you start experiencing this love, it feels revolutionary. You feel like an activist. Actually, it's significant, and it can impact every part of your life. Even things you never thought love had a place. Maybe you're an accountant, or maybe you're a mechanic. You will start to notice love showing up even in machines, even in our relationships with animals. Yeah, so just consider the possibility that love is all around, in everything, driving everything, and it's available to everyone.
Because it is.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Even if you don't believe it yet. Yeah.
um, Exploring the topic of relationships for yourself,
Mm.
and also helping others do it, because I know that you've been coaching people also having more beautiful relationships. How did it impact other domain of your life? Like, how did it, spread into other
Mm.
areas?
Yeah, for sure. I've been mostly in relationships in my adulthood. I've certainly had big breaks in between, and I've tried lots of things. Some of it not so constructive. Some of it, especially in the last 7 years, while experiencing myself in a new way. And the way that it spread is, I learned that I, as a person on this earth, have resources within me, energy, focus, care, love, that I cultivate in relationships, that then I can bring to whatever I'm doing, whether that's studying something, or coaching with people, or I do things for fun, like dance and sing karaoke. The confidence I experience in my relationships allows me to be more full and free in the other things that I do. Knowing that I've done good work of cultivating healthy bonds and great communication in my partnerships has helped me feel more free to do new things in my life, to try new things, to challenge my own ideas of myself. Also, doing better in our relationships, our intimate relationships, helps us improve our relationships with our family, helps improve our relationships with our coworkers. And I'll be clear about this. Sometimes that means deciding which people in your life you're not going to give as much attention and energy to, because they aren't ready or available to actually listen and challenge their status quo. So this might be clarifying for people as they go along. They might start seeing people who are maybe in a pattern of creating division, and you'll start to see your relationships change. Or maybe you'll start noticing you have better boundaries, not just in your intimate relationships, but with your friendships. You'll start saying no to things that you really don't agree with. You start saying no to things that are crossing your sense of safety or sense of autonomy. And you'll start to notice standing up for yourself more, and letting your voice be heard, and your perspective being more clear. And also, you'll develop the capacity to hold multiple perspectives at the same time, because you have to be able to do this in any relationship. If you really want to grow with someone, you need to be able to hold their perspective along with your own, as well as perhaps other perspectives. If there's other stakeholders in your life, like other partners or family or close friends, you need to be able to hold that in your conversation, in your decision making, in the choices about how you live. And you'll start to see it pop up in everything you do. Is there anything else you'd like me to ask?
No, there is one thing that I would add
Mm,
to what you just said. It's the abundance mindset,
mm,
because I feel that there is a big scarcity mindset when it comes to love. Like there is only one love, or if I have this love, I must not lose it because there is only a few. It's rare.
hmm.
There is something like that, and I agree that love is precious, and that what we experience with one person cannot be replicated with another person because it will be different. And in that sense, it's precious. But it is not scarce. There is always more.
Hmm.
and and this abundance that I could feel in the relationships, I can feel that it's also touching other areas of my life, such as projects and jobs and friendships and just anything. It's and it changes everything. I was with a group of friends recently, and they were all in this scarcity mindset related to money and related to men. And I looked at them and I was like, how do they think like that?
Mm,
Like, where did they learn that? And
hmm.
I probably learned it too, but somehow I broke free from it. And this is so important to realize that many people could be a good fit for us if we're willing to explore different ways of relating.
Yes, indeed. And that's it also that also comes back to letting go of who we think we are and getting more clear with ourselves and with others around our boundaries. We'll find that people fit better because we aren't confused about uh, what we think we need or what we're insecure about. We'll stop shaping our relationships around our insecurities. Instead, we start shaping our relationships around what thrives together. You know, what where joy is, where fun is, where growth is between people. And we find that actually when we can find that common ground with people, um, we become more attractive to them. They're more attractive to us. We feel the rhythm with people and more people, and it's totally happened for me. I've been totally amazed how I bonded with people I never thought would be in my life, who are living lifestyles that actually don't have experience with. Um, and suddenly there they are, and we click, and they've come from totally different cultures. You know, uh, they aren't native English speakers. You know, there's all sorts of aspects of humans that I never thought I could connect to because of the culture I grew up in. And suddenly I'm finding with love and with responsibility toward communication that, yeah, we actually can connect in incredible ways. And as you're saying, every relationship is unique. And discovering that we can have unique relationships, we can appreciate, we can feel that gratitude for the uniqueness of that relationship at the same time as feeling gratitude toward other relationships, and that we have energy to share with both. It's not exclusive. Our capacity to love and be generous and kind and understanding is not exclusive.
Yeah. Wow. I feel it makes us better human beings, being able to have those skills and sharing them in the world. I have a post-it here, and like it's been on my desk for weeks. And I wrote it because I had a conversation with someone, and I thought to myself I should not forget about that. And I wrote, "It's it's not about how it looks; it's about how it feels."
Mm.
And it
Yep.
was related to love. It was a conversation I had with someone. It was related to love. And I think so many of us are just fixated on one way to create the relationship and how it should look like, instead of feeling like, oh, how do I feel with this person? And who can I be with this person? Because I feel great. And this is such a big difference than
Mm-hmm.
when you operate from here with the mental image of what you want to create, or from the feeling of it. It's just massive difference.
For sure. I mean, it's the difference between trying to fit a human into a box or a shape uh, and planting a garden with them.
Yeah. I have another question because I've been asked that a lot. How to navigate jealousy?
Mm,
And what do you respond to people who think, "Oh, I would be jealous if my partner would have other partners," or like, what's your answers around this jealousy topic?
hmm. Yeah, jealousy is challenging. I need to disclose that I don't think I've ever actually experienced the kind of jealousy that other people experience. I tend to,
Matthew is very special.
yeah, like I tend to feel compersion. So like if my partner or my lover has another partner, if they're treating each other well, I feel I love them both. You know, it grows, it multiplies. The jealousy doesn't come in because I feel secure also with my partnership. It's not threatening. And so, but when people are feeling jealousy, it's usually because they are feeling some insecurity within themselves, some lack of trust, some fear of rejection or abandonment that might come about this losing. It's this idea. It's this a lack mentality about being afraid you're going to lose something if you allow that other person to be with other people. And again, this will come back to this idea of wholeness and expansion. How do we confront the jealous parts inside of us? How do we, because they are trying to tell us something. I don't want to dismiss jealousy as totally useless. I want to put forward that jealousy is trying to tell us that inside of us, there are parts of us that we need to give love to, that we can't actually rely on that other person to fix. There are perhaps wounds that are there that are asking to be healed, asking to be cared for, to be given attention, to be understood. And, you know, that we could give words to this. It might be shadow work. It might be, there might be inner child work to be done there. But that jealousy is coming from a place of insecurity, and that insecurity is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to see when we're getting into controlling behavior, when we're trying to control the actions and even the beliefs of another person, especially a person we love, because we're afraid that they're going to choose someone else, and that choice means that we will lose something. It's not coming from a mindset of, wow, if that person loves that person, that love is going to compound and come back to me, which is actually what happens when we can trust. The love grows. You know, if I'm in a relationship with someone and I experience that security, that love, that growth, my other relationships benefit, because now I have more resources within me to love more fully, to give more. And I'm not focused on my fears. I'm not focused on my doubts. So yeah, I think jealousy is an opportunity to discover parts of yourself that need to be understood, beliefs that need to be let go, patterns of thought, patterns of behavior that are really stifling, keeping you in a mindset of control and a mindset of defensiveness.
Thank you. So everything is an opportunity to dive deeper and get to know yourself deeper and love yourself more.
Yeah. And I say that with compassion. Again, I haven't really felt jealousy like I perceive it in others, but it does look, it looks painful. Like truly, I say like I don't want to pretend it's easy, but it's good work to do, because even if you choose to be exclusive in your relationships, even if you happen to have circumstances that are kind of isolated or insulated from jealous opportunities, in terms of your friendships or your lovers, the work still needs to be done. And that work will expand your sense of being and confidence in your whole life in anything you do and create.
Yeah.
So
Thank you so much.
don't avoid jealousy. Instead, try to heal it.
Beautiful. Is there anything you want to add?
I've mentioned it a little bit, but I want to be really direct about this. When it comes to this idea of monogamy and this idea of polyamory or consensual non-monogamy, sometimes it is a paradigm shift for sure, because especially in status quo culture, you know, we're constantly being showed models of a nuclear family, models of a two-person intimate relationship. And all the literature is about that. A lot of the therapies are centered around that mindset. The films, the movies, the stories of love and romance, they're all in that paradigm. And so it can be difficult to think outside that paradigm. But when you do, you start to see the flaws, the cognitive bias in that paradigm. And you realize it actually doesn't, there's a lot that isn't serving the health of human beings. And it's not to say that that is a problem of exclusivity, but it is I would say, a problem of monogamous culture. So what I want to get into here is we actually already know how to be loving multiple people. We do it all the time. We do it by loving our friends. We know how to be generous and kind with our family sometimes. we know how to be devoted and transformative with children that we're raising. We actually have the capacity to do this. It's just when we start thinking about intimacy and sex being introduced, suddenly it becomes like a new box that seems impossible to imagine more than one person fitting into. And what I want to suggest is that security, that box, the illusion of that security that box gives you from exclusivity, it is an illusion. And consider the possibility, and again, this might not be something you can really know until you try it, of you could actually feel more secure by doing the work of better communicating with multiple partners, of experiencing the nurturance, the care from multiple people that you are loving and intimate with, as well as noticing that you have the capacity to be in committed long-term relationships, if you choose to be, with more than one person. That you start to care about their well-being. You start to see your partners being stakeholders in each other's lives, caring about what happens in their families. Because imagine what you already know from your adult relationships. They're transformative, right? We can experience security, we can experience growth, we can experience fun and healing. Now imagine you're doing that in multiple relationships at a time. That's compounded. It's like a particle accelerator for growth and learning. Now, there is one thing I'll say about it, and this is, if you read any of the books about non-monogamy, they say the same thing, which is the biggest resource you're going to have trouble with is time. And I have a lot of respect for people who explore non-monogamy, and they have so many commitments in their lives that they really care about, that their heart is involved. And they're like, actually, I don't have time, or I'm not creating the time, or choosing not to create the time for multiple relationships. I choose to be exclusive, not because I feel insecure, but because I want to devote my time to these other passions. And for some people, that other passion is another human or two other humans. You'll probably find out that there is a limit of the number of humans that fit into your lifestyle in terms of romantic relationships and partnerships. So, and there's something we haven't talked about at all here, which is shame. Shame is a sneaky one, because it is constantly pulling us away from love. Shame is constantly contracting our sense of will, our sense of trust, our sense of creativity. And it's difficult, but we could have a whole podcast series on shame. But what I want to say about shame is notice it. Notice it when you're feeling a sense of shame. Notice what you're feeling in your body. Notice it when you're thinking shameful language in your mind, or even speaking shameful language to other people. Notice it, and then talk about it. That's the beginning. Talk about it with the people you care about, whether they're your friends or your family or your partners. Say, hey, I've been having this feeling. I feel it here. It feels like shame. I know I'm judging myself, or I know I'm judging you, and I don't know what to do with it. Just start there. You don't need to have the answers. You don't need to know how to move it or heal it. But once you begin that, you'll start to notice things are going to change. And this is also, it's right in line with how do we open up, how do we open doors to love? We do need to start to consider, how do we deal with shame? And the more love you have, the easier it is to deal with shame. I promise you. It's like it's a powerful force.
Thank you. Do you have any resources that you want to share? Your favorite books, or go-to people to follow, or to get familiar with different ways to love and create beautiful relationships?
Yeah, conversations about love and non-monogamous relationship structures have been, these have been happening a long time, but in terms of the therapy, in terms of the literature, it's been pretty limited up until, I would say, the last 10, 15 years. And the first one I would say is, to me, which has just totally transformed my understanding of how I was experiencing love within myself and in my relationships, was a book called The Mastery of Love by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's a short book. It's easy. It's in multiple languages. Perhaps you prefer to read in French or Spanish. It's available. And I highly recommend this book. I mean, I keep reading it. I keep reading it, coming back to it every few years, because it's so affirming in how to be with yourself and how to prioritize your responsibility for your own thoughts and feelings and relationships. Just read it. If you only have the capacity to read one book this year, read that book. That's how strongly I feel about that book.
I think it's on YouTube in many languages.
Probably, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then the other two books are about non-monogamy. That's their target audience, but I will say that the exercises in the book, the research, the guidance in both these books is incredible for all relationship structures, whether you choose to be exclusive or monogamous. It's good stuff. They're some of the best relationship books out there. And the first one was published first, is called Polysecure by Jessica Firm. And she's a psychotherapist who started having clients come in who were feeling lost because none of the communities and literature out there on attachment style was for people outside monogamy. And they felt they didn't know where to go. And so she noticed this absence of literature. And so she wrote this book and started doing this research and working with her clients this way. And this particular book, I would say, is great for people who are noticing jealousy, noticing insecurity, noticing their attachment style, the feeling of anxiousness or avoidance in their relationship patterns. And they want to understand that better and start taking steps towards healing that, towards living their relationships differently. A lot of great guidance on communication in that book as well, in the context of both non-monogamy and monogamous relationships as well. It's very relevant. Her latest book is Polywise, and I actually haven't finished reading it yet. I'm about halfway through. And this book is also about consensual non-monogamy, but particularly about people who really are making this paradigm shift in their lives. Maybe they're already in a monogamous relationship, and that relationship is suddenly like, how do we do this? How do we transition from a relationship style that everyone around us is doing to a relationship style that maybe nobody around us is doing? How do we talk to our friends about it? How do we talk to each other about it? How do we, in the moment, deal with the triggers, deal with the doubts, deal with the mistakes, deal with forgiveness? So this book is very good. I really recommend it as well, especially if you're sincerely wanting to prepare yourself for a new relationship, like a committed relationship, or if you are already in a committed relationship that you're like, wow, we're kind of hitting a wall in terms of our closeness or intimacy, and we want to communicate better. We want to understand each other better. We want to actually have a little bit of a revolution together in terms of our experience of love and relationships. And that might be with other people as well. But even if you're choosing to be exclusive, this book will really, really spark things for sure.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
You didn't say more than two?
I didn't. I think it's a great book. Yeah, it's also a great book. I can't remember the author off the top of my head. They're friends though. Jessica Fern, the authors are
Yeah.
friends. They totally are active in each other's lives and share ideas, and they have
Yeah.
different focuses.
Yeah. Franklin Vogt and Every
Yeah.
Cut. Yeah. Well, thank you for everything. What if people want to reach out to you and
Mm.
find out what you offer? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I think the best way to reach me is just through email. I know it sounds old fashioned, but it's also very common. I'll say the email address out loud, but please put it in print because it might be difficult to get the correct one. So it's M like Matthew, J Galloway, GALLOWAY @gmail.com. Yeah, send me a message.
I'll write it down in the
Yeah, thank you.
caption of the podcast. Thank you for everything. There would be so much more that we could share together about love. And maybe we'll save it for another episode. And I can also ask my community what they would like us to talk about together for another one. But I would love to do
I'd
it
love
again.
that. Me too.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for this opportunity. I mean, this is what 4 years in the making in terms of the conversations we've been having, and yeah, thanks for bringing it back around, bringing it into reality, taking the idea and bringing it forward. You're a beautiful creator and one of my favorite human beings.
Thank you for saying yes to it, and thank you for saying yes to love.
You make it very easy.
Thank you. Okay, so if you've enjoyed this episode, please share the love around you and give it 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and leave a review if you've enjoyed it, and send us a message. And see you next week for another episode. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.